You're listening to the Patriot Nation podcast, presented by Pat's Pulpit.
All right, welcome to another edition of the Patriot Nation podcast. As always, it's your boy Pat Lane here. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. He covers the Patriots and sports betting for CLNS Media, and he's the host of the Patriot Beat podcast on Patriots CLNS. Of course, it's Mike Kadlick. Mike, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Of course, Pat. Thanks for having me. I like that intro song. That's a way to get into it. Good big week at free agency. So let's get after it. Happy to join you.
Yeah. You've been saying we follow each other for a while on Twitter, but it's the first time we've ever actually talked face to face. So It's pretty cool. It's always nice meeting Twitter friends. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. You get to watch us hash it out live here. So
exactly.
Let's get after it. Yeah.
Exactly. All right. So lots of stuff going on. Obviously, Patriots have brought in a few kind of depth pieces, and of course, they brought in Juju as well, who, you can kind of argue about whether Juju or Jakobi Meyers were the best free agents, wide receiver free agents on the market, but certainly it was one of them. I personally think it was Juju, but, some people would argue about Jakobi Meyers. Do you like the switch the Patriots did to let Meyers go and bring Juju in? Do you think they're better for doing that?
I do. I like it. I think I understand what people say when it kind of seems like an FU to Jakobi because they're kind of feel like the same player. Jacoby's been here. He's sort of, put together that rapport with Mac Jones. And so it kind of might look like an FU to Mac saying, we're going to bring someone else in here and it's not your own guy. But I think Juju's upside is that much better than Jacoby's. They play a similar position, right? Just over 6 foot, primarily in the slot. Not a burner, but have a little bit of, quick twitch speed, can get open. But the way that Juju can, create after the catch and maybe break tackles a little bit more and get you that extra yards. Like Jakobi was just so strictly a possession receiver, and it's good because you need that security blanket guy I can get it to. He's going to get open quick, but you didn't get that much more out of him. And, everyone also compared the contracts at first, right? But then it came out that Juju's contract was actually cheaper than Jakobi. And so at the end of the day, they can get on the same page, Mac and Juju, I think. You still need something else in that room. Juju can't be your one. His best season, that 1,400-yard season in Pittsburgh, that was great, but he was a 2 behind Antonio Brown. He's not great as a 1. I think you need someone else to go dictate coverage, but it's a good start, but I still think they need more.
I agree 100%. And I agree with everything, too, about Juju being an upgrade as well.
Yeah.
But you're right about that in the fact that he's not a number 1 receiver, just like Jakobi Meyers wasn't a number 1 wide receiver. And if you try to make him be that, it's just not going to work, right? And so I think the Patriots understand that as well. We have a question already about Jerry Jeudy. What will it take to get Jerry Jeudy? Judy's kind of the guy for me. He's kind of the guy for me. I know that, he's similar to Juju in the fact that the routes that he'll be running and stuff, he just brings so much explosiveness to the position. And he can play outside a little bit more effectively than Juju can. We could also go to the draft. But if we were...
Or Hopkins. I know they haven't...
Or Hopkins, yes. Yeah,
and apparently we're out on him, but I think there might still be a chance.
Well, I wonder... See, the Hopkins thing for me is... If the price is low enough, I got no problem with it. I'm certainly not sending 46 for DeAndre Hopkins, 100%. Maybe 76, I'd think about it. 2 4th-round picks or a 4th and a 5th-round pick, okay, now I'm sold. But that's kind of the hard stuff for me. What would you be willing to give up for Jerry Jeudy? I know they've said they wanted a 1st-round pick, which I think is lunacy. Patriots aren't giving up 14 for sure. But would you give up 46 and a 4th-round pick, or 46 and Kendrick Bourne, as Evan Lazar, kind of made mention of earlier today on Twitter?
I would. 14, no way. 14's too high. I think at that point, Jeudy is only 23, so he's still very young, right? But he's got a little tread on the tires. He's played for a few years, so 14 seems a little steep to me, but 46 and Kendrick Bourne, 46 and Josh Uche, 46 and call it, like you said, maybe a 4th-round pick or something, double picks, sure, why not? I think it's worth it. And I would agree that as much as I would like Hopkins here. He's older. He's that true number one outside receiver where Jeudy can kind of flip flop. But I think that can also work, right? If you use Jeudy and Juju, who both can play, inside and outside. Bill O'Brien's the mismatch king. He loves to be able to, find his guys and, really like scout up that defense, right? And find your mismatch. And so, I think if you get Jeudy and Juju here, that can work. You still have. You might have to trade Kendrick Bourne, but that's okay. Kendrick Bourne, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Jerry Jeudy is very redundant, in my opinion, those three.
Yeah.
So Kendrick Bourne's the worst one out of the three. And so I would do 40 KB all day.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. And the other thing about it, too, is that you still have Devontae Parker, and you also don't want to bury Tyquan Thornton down the list.
That's
so it's like,
Tyquan.
if you're keeping Kendrick Bourne and you acquire Jerry Jeudy, Kendrick Bourne's your fifth wide receiver. So at that point, you're just holding on to him for depth purposes anyways.
Yeah.
It makes sense to get rid of him in a trade like that, especially if you can give up 46 in him to get a guy like Jeudy. The other issue I have with giving up 14 for him is that although he's only 23, he's got 2 years left on his deal. You're going to have to pay him. Now, you could do what they did with Brandon Cooks in 2017, which is trade for him, and then he has a good year, and then you decide to trade him next year too, going into the final year of his contract because you don't want to pay him.
Right.
You could do that too. I don't love that idea, but you could, but it's like, how much are you going to get back for him if you do that is really the question.
At that point too, it's like you're getting, you're losing consistency again with your quarterback.
Right.
Like
exactly.
You're just shipping guys in, shipping them out. As much as we just said we like Juju over Jacoby, it's basically at that point it's going to be an entirely new receiving core, an entirely new offensive coaching staff and system. And then you bring Jeudy here for a year, and then you got to replace him again. It's like there's no continuity there. And so I would take Jeudy and I would pay Jeudy. I would trade for him and pay for him because
I agree with you there.
It takes a lot, but it's worth it, right? You look at Tyreek Hill in Miami and Stephon Diggs in Buffalo, right? You go get that guy, you pay him a lot of money. Look, the cap is what it is, but they're worth it, right? You have to kind of pair that third-year quarterback with that big-time receiver. So it's going to cost a lot, but it's going to be worth it. So I would do that if I were them.
Okay. I like it. I agree with you. And that's the thing. I mean, if you're going to do that for Jeudy, sign him. Like,
exactly.
Like, why are we doing
this? It can't be a rental. It can't be a rental.
Right.
Like Hopkins would be a rental,
right?
Probably, or a short contract. Odell would be another short contract. Odell's probably not going to get a multi-year deal at this point.
Well, someone was asking in the chat, would you pay him $15 million a season? I think that's wild. I mean, I can't look. He's OBJ. I get that, but like, was he really that guy in LA? I mean, he was good, but he wasn't that good.
Well, I love chaos, so of course I want them to go with Odell just because it's fun and it adds an element to it here.
Yeah.
But look, what he did in New York at the end was tough, and what he did in Cleveland at the end was tough. Just the way he kind of forced himself out of both situations. But when he was in LA, he was under control, and he was good. He was playing quality football. He was a number 2 to Cooper Kupp, of course, and so that's why he was playing well. But he was. It sounds silly, but he was healthy until he wasn't, right? Like he was there, and then he tore his ACL, and that was that. But as far as being a tough guy in the locker room, I think maybe those days are gone for him, and you can bring him here, and he can mesh with Belichick. I mean, again, it's a risk. It's all going to be a risk. Him and Hopkins are going to be a risk. Jeudy is probably a little bit less. So
well, and especially on a 1-year deal, right? You said he's probably not going to get a multi-year deal. If you're able to bring him in on a 1-year deal for $8 million, $10 million on a prove-it deal, then you might get more out of him than if you sign him to a 3-year, $35 million contract or something like that. You know what I mean? So I don't hate the idea of it. I just don't know if the Patriots are going to be the team to do it.
Right. That's a guy too, though. Like we talk about unlocking Juju with a number 1. And I think Odell can dictate coverage in that way, where you're going to put him on the outside and teams are going to worry about him because he's Odell Beckham Jr. And he still has that elite route running ability. He can catch the ball. He has one of the better catch radiuses we've ever seen. So he's going to command a number 1, and then that's just going to open up Juju inside.
Yeah.
So they need something else on top of Juju. We said it before, but Juju can't be your 1. So whether it's Odell, whether it's Hopkins, whether it's Jeudy, they need to do something more in the room.
Well, and so here's the other question I have for you, and we'll move off of wide receiver here, but I figure while we're on wide receiver, might as well stick on it. Sure. Let's say you go wide receiver in the first round, and maybe you trade back, and maybe you take it at 14, or whatever the case may be. But you have three guys who I think are legitimate first round talents at wide receiver: JSN, right? Quentin Johnston, and Zay Flowers. And I think Zay isn't, to me, Zay at 14 is a little early. I'd love to see him trade back and get Zay in like the late teens, early 20s, you know what I mean? Somewhere around there. But I do think that could work. Who out of those three is the guy? If you were like, you can take one of these wide receivers, which one are you taking?
My favorite by far is Jackson Smith-Njigba. By far.
Yeah.
But talking about redundancy, that feels very redundant after they just signed Juju, which is tough. And then Zay Flowers, you bring him in, and he's going to basically strictly be a slot guy.
Right.
And so if I had to choose one out of the three, regardless of the Patriots situation, it's Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think he's dominant. He's an unbelievable route runner. He has yak ability too. He doesn't have that like top end speed, but he's still able to get away from guys.
Right.
I just love his game, and I think he had a really good combine outside of not running the 40. He basically said, F your 40. I can do everything else, and I don't need to run as fast as you guys might want me to. So that's the guy in the draft to go. The one that is scaring me now, and it just feels like a N'Keal Harry clone, is Quentin Johnston.
Yeah.
It's just that big guy, your number one X receiver outside, basically a carbon copy of what everyone wanted N'Keal Harry to be. And I worry that now that they have that slot in Juju, that they're going to try and go get Quentin Johnston to pair with them, and it's just not going to work. And that's strictly me being a Patriots fan worrying about N'Keal Harry in the first round again. But I worry about that. But no, JSN's the guy for sure.
Okay. I agree with you.
Okay.
You know,
see, we're getting off to a hot start, Pat.
Yeah,
we're
see,
agreeing on everything. It's good stuff.
I love Zay Flowers. I love Zay Flowers. And so I think he could work here, but he is kind of a slot only guy, but he plays the slot very differently than the way Juju plays the slot. Yeah. So you could make the argument that, okay, our two outside guys are going to be, Parker and Thornton, and then we're going to have our two inside guys as Juju and, and Zay Flowers. And again, I am a little redundant there maybe, but I do like the idea of it. But JSN, he's so polished as a route runner.
He's just a technician. It's crazy.
You know what I mean? And so it's great. The guy, I will say, if they want to go for a big guy, a big wide receiver, the guy that I like, and by the way, Team Crazy Matt literally said the thing about Quentin Johnston gives you Harry vibes, like right before you said it. And so Dark Blue Gold with his point, Leonardo DiCaprio point on the screen. So the guy for me that I want them to target, if they want a N'Keal Harry type player, DK Metcalf light, in my opinion. Very light, but DK Metcalf light. Bryce Ford Wheaton from West Virginia. Kid's an absolute monster.
That's Alex Bart's guy. He'll love to hear that.
Under a 4.4 at the combine, like jumps out of the gym, huge kid. And you're getting him in the hundreds probably, as opposed to, in the teens. And so that makes a big difference. Obviously, you take a swing at a guy like that.
Yeah.
Even if you go for Flowers or JSN in the first round, I love the idea of, jumping at a project like that and telling Devontae Parker, hey, show this kid how to use his body. Show this kid how to make those plays, right? And, you give him a redshirt year, essentially, where you say, look, we're not going to ask you to do much because we drafted a rookie wide receiver. We got a decent amount of guys. And so, you're going to be here. You get a spot, plays here and there. But for the most part, work on your game, figure it out. You have the athleticism to do it. And I think that's the big thing.
Teamer too.
Right.
He's quality on special teams. So he could at least play special teams his first year, find a niche there, and then, off and running in year two. The problem with that is, look, now we're talking, and I don't know if your idea if you're sticking with JSN or Zay and then Bryce Ford Wheaton later, but then it's Juju and Kendrick Bourne, and then you still have Tyquan Thornton to find a role, and Devontae Parker, and then Bryce Ford Wheaton. So then you're just talking about a lot of guys, and it's like, I worry that Tyquan's going to get, pushed out of the fold here, and that would be too bad because he seems like a guy who, has the raw talent. He had an unbelievable training camp last year. When we were down there, I was down there watching him, and it was like every single day, day after day, he was making highlight reel catch after, he was getting wide open. It was like, okay, they really found a guy here. And then he got hurt. And then it just the whole thing spiraled out of control last year. And we probably shouldn't even talk about last year's Patriot because it was just such a disaster. Let's just, move forward and let's go. But I still think Taekwon has some really solid upside here. So
I agree with you. But, I mean, you saw the catch he had. Was it the Colts game where he had the catch inside the red zone where he just smoked his guy to the inside? Those are the types of things for me that I see from him. That it's like, that's it. Like, there's not, those guys can't do stuff like that typically. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I am
a fan of Bryce Ford Wheaton too.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I agree. I don't want that's not at the expense of Taekwon leaving. Right.
Yeah,
to me, you draft 2 rookie wide receivers because the only guy you have, well, now you have Juju as well, but it's Juju and Thornton, and that's it after this year.
Right.
So but anyways. Let's move to the tackle spot because I think tackle is kind of that next big spot. Looks like Riley Reif got paid a decent amount.
Yeah.
Kind of seems like he might be the starting right tackle, and they're going into the season with Trent Brown and Riley Reif. I don't know how you feel about that.
It feels like patchwork, but last year was kind of patchwork. Look, last year was patchwork, but they were like they weren't deep. So you ended up bringing Marcus Cannon in, who you basically brought him in out of retirement. And then you had Kajus in there. And then Isaiah Wynn, who was basically benched. Then you kind of have to force him back into the lineup because everyone else was either bad or hurt. And there was those few weeks where Trent Brown was sick and then he was, walking onto the field and looked like he was pouting. And it was just the whole offensive line was a disaster last year. But I think it had more to do with the depth and the coaching than the actual skills, right? Like when Trent's on, he can be a very, very good tackle.
Yeah.
So look, if you go into it with Trent Brown at left, Riley Reif at right, and then now you signed Calvin Anderson and you signed Connor McDermott and you tendered Yadni Kajus, so it looks like he's going to be back. Now you have 2 solid tackles when they're on in Trent and Reif, and then 3 swing guys who can do the job if need be. I'm okay with that, but I still think you need to add in the draft. I don't know if you need to do it at 14 anymore. Look, I over the last few days, I'm kind of, as soon as they signed Riley Reif, I was okay with it. It's because it felt like a decent, like a good move, like a quality, maybe not a very high ceiling, but also he can play. Like, I just think he can play. I'm not too worried about Riley Reif. And again, like you said, he got the money. So if he's healthy, he's going to be there. And I don't hate it, but I still think they still need to add more. They still need to do more.
I mean, I know he got paid, right? Yeah. But like, how much did he really? He got what, $2 million, $2.5 million guaranteed. Like, it's not like he's getting $10 million. Like, I just think, I think it's a bit of an overreaction from people where, the tweets all came out. It looks like he's going to be starting this year. And I'm like, well, he's like less than $3 million guaranteed.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I mean, sure. But like, he's not necessarily, it's not like, oh, we're paying him like Trent Brown, which by the way, Trent Brown, they can cut at any moment too and save $10 million on the cap. But I think that he's there and he got paid that money because there are solutions in the draft. And they're looking at it saying, there's a few guys that we like. If we can get the guy that we really like that we think can start day one at 14, sure, we'll do it.
Yeah.
But if we can't, then we can take the guy at, 76 who is a project and may not be able to start right away. And now we have a guy that's at least a competent right tackle who can start. You know what I mean? So I think that,
they're keeping their options open.
And that's kind of the idea, right? And it's a little bit patchwork, like you said. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's, let's kind of patch it together. Let's see what happens. And then we kind of put it all together and say, all right, if Reif has to start, then he starts. And we're okay with it. We don't love it, but we're okay with it. And like you kind of said, patchwork, it gives you more depth. And I think that
the depth is huge.
That's the biggest thing for me. Marcus Cannon last year was a disaster because you had no choice, right? I mean, thank God for Connor freaking McDermott. Like,
seriously,
he was the Jets practice squad,
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so,
that was.
Go
ahead.
No. I was just gonna say when you trust in Connor McDermott, it's
Right.
it's not ideal, you know.
And I do think too that you get rid of Patricia, who was the offensive line coach, and you bring in Adrian Clem, who
Yep.
he was in Pittsburgh for a year. He was with Oregon. He was an associate head coach there, so maybe some leadership qualities as well that can kind of look. The thing with Trent Brown has always been he works great under Dante Scarnecchia, and everyone else he kind of tunes
Right.
out.
Yeah.
Look, I don't know. I don't want to sit here and compare Adrian Clem to Dante Scarnecchia already. That was the best offensive line coach of all time. But
Yeah.
if Clem is what he's talked up to be, then he can come in here and scheme the thing up as well. Work with Bill O'Brien, get the offensive line to work well, and hit the ground running. So again, I don't hate it, but I still think I'm with you. I don't know if they could really still do anything at 14 to me. At some points, people have ruled out wide receiver now or ruled out tackle now, but I don't know. I still think the options are wide open because I can see them doubling up at both positions again. So
yeah. No, but I think that's where we're at right now, and that's what they've kind of intentionally done, where they've looked at it and said, we don't have to draft someone at 14. Now, I do think if one of the top 2 or 3 corners are on the board at 14, they kind of have to do it. If Christian Gonzalez is sitting there at 14 and they don't take him, I'm going to freaking throw something through my television. Like, I love that guy so much. And if he's somehow there at 14, like him or Witherspoon, I don't know how you can't draft that guy when you need a number 1 corner, So that's kind of the spot that I see as having the most need. But the thing is that their secondary played pretty well last year.
Yeah.
And they're bringing basically the same secondary back, obviously without Devin McCourty, but you're bringing basically the same secondary back. And if they end up signing Taylor Rapp, I think that, it can be fairly close, assuming that everything's figured out with Jack Jones.
Yeah.
I think that we can be kind of in the same spot where we were last year,
Yeah, the Jack Jones situation will be interesting. He was, what was he, a 4th round pick?
4th round, yeah. Yep.
And so, he played really well when he was on, and then he got suspended with the whole Jake Bailey thing. Not that they were tied together, they were separate.
Right.
But, it's funny when that first happened. Everyone's like, "What are Jake Bailey and Jack Jones doing together?" I thought people thought they got suspended for the same thing, and obviously 2 different things. But So yeah, I do think he'll probably end up being back, and he's had the issues before, but when he's on, he's really solid.
Right.
I would love Taylor Rapp to sign, and it looked like he left without a contract. He's going to Cincy, and I worry that Cincinnati will outbid the Patriots because they just lost Jesse Bates.
Right.
And the Patriots don't need it as much as Baltimore or Cincinnati might right now.
Right.
So, but no, I think Taylor Rapp seals that room up with now you have not Julius Peppers.
Yes, Jabril. I always do that. Do that.
Jabril Peppers, Adrian Phillips, Kyle Duggar, Taylor Rapp completes that room.
Yeah.
Jonathan Jones, Jalen Mills, and you need another corner.
Yeah.
Whether it's, again, Marcus Jones, he's solid. He's a solid slot corner. I would love to see them take one of those big guys at 14, whether it's Christian Gonzalez. I also love Joey Porter Jr. from Penn State. I've heard the argument that they might not take him because of his father, and there's a beef there with the Patriots, but put the beefs aside, just like we want to put the beef aside with Hopkins and Bill O'Brien, put this one aside. If he's there, you got to take one of them because, they're studs. They could lock up, and then you can rotate everybody else at the other side if you have to. And then you have options. So
well, and look, you're gonna need to do that. Look around, right? Look around. Garrett Wilson, Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Waddle. Alan Lazard. Wow. He's all right. You're right. And so that's
he's good with Aaron Rodgers.
That's very true. That is very true. And he's their certified number 2 as opposed to being the number 1. So there's a lot of talent in the wide receiver room in this division. And so you need guys that can cover. So we'll see. But I do think it's interesting what kind of that spot is going to be. Julius Brents is a guy who I think I'd love in the 2nd round. Again, brings that size.
Long. He's like 6'4", 6'5".
Yes. Yeah. So again, you need a guy like that. They're all short, small guys. And my guy is Emmanuel Forbes. I love Emmanuel Forbes this year. I'm like super high on him. He waited at the combine.
You've tweeted that a time or two, haven't you?
I have a few times. Yeah.
No, I love it. He's
he weighed in the combine at 166 though. And it's like at some point, someone's got to make a tackle out there. And you got Marcus Jones, who's 5'8", and Jack Jones, who weighs 170 pounds. And then you throw Forbes out there who weighs 165. And it's like, well, you know.
Just bully ball at that point.
Right. So, you know, I love him, but I got to imagine he's not going to be here this year. But you never know, I suppose.
The size on Forbes is a deterrent.
Right.
Look, what did he had the most pick sixes in NCAA history. Is that correct?
6 pick sixes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, the ball hawking ability is like uncanny. Like, that's unbelievable. But, I mean, if you're 165 pounds in the league trying to tackle,
right.
You know, Alan Lazard, and I use Lazard because he's one of the bigger receivers out there, but trying to tackle Stephon Diggs, like it's just it's tough. So yeah,
and he survived. He survived in the SEC, but the SEC isn't the NFL. You know,
no, it's not.
So so we'll see what happens there. I think there's a lot of guys kind of in that spot, but honestly, to me, if you add some more talent at wide receiver, if you shore up the offensive line, and even if it's a project guy, even if you just stick with this 5 and Riley Reiff is your starting right tackle, but you have a young guy behind him, and and you add to the secondary, I think this team can compete. Now, John over here is saying that the team's closer to being blown up than a contender. How can anyone be happy? I don't know, man. I think, and I don't know if they're competing for a championship. Like, let's pump the brakes on that, but I think that this team is close to good enough to getting into the playoffs.
I think so too.
And so you kind of go out there and you bring some guys in that you can add some stuff to, and you can improve this team right away.
Yep.
And I think you're competing, and that's kind of where I'm at with the team.
They were right there at the end of last season.
Yeah.
In week 17, they had a shot to make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't. But they were there. If things fell their way in the final week of the year, they would have played the following weekend. So you get rid of the disaster that was the offensive coaching staff. Mm-hmm. You give competence around your quarterback, who desperately, desperately needs it going into year 3.
Yes.
Give him a couple better receivers. Again, I said it 3 or 4 times now, but Juju's better than Jacoby. I don't care what you have to say. He's a better receiver.
Right.
And so give him that guy. Give him something else. Give him Bill O'Brien, who they haven't actually technically worked together, but it almost feels like it's destiny at this point that they finally come together after they just, passing each other in the night at Alabama, right? But his system fits what Mac Jones' skill set is so well.
Mm-hmm.
Get the ball to players in space, matchups, be smart with the football. So, look, I think you're right. They can compete for a playoff spot because they're that much better than they were last year already. Just getting rid of the offensive coaching staff, and they were that close at the end of last season. So they can compete for sure. Yeah,
and that's kind of where I'm at. Like, let's just, they're not great. They're not winning the division or anything like that, but they're good enough. They're good enough to give you, to at least be competitive. And so, and I'm okay with that. And again, I think the coaching staff is huge. And you mentioned, the offensive coaching with Adrian Clem. To me, Matt Patricia wasn't the offensive line coach last year. Billy Yates was. The problem was that we didn't know that until week 2 of the season. So we went into the season assuming that Matty P was the offensive line coach. Everyone did, including the Patriots. And then they ran a game and they were like, this isn't going to work. He can't possibly coach, right? And then so they were like, all right, Billy Yates, it's your squad. And it's like, he's not ready to do that, So that's a big upgrade for me in that spot. And I think that, as bad as Matty P was, that's one of the worst mistakes that Belichick's ever made. I mean, 100%. Just, it can't happen. Just cannot happen.
Disaster.
So
I used it a million times last year. It was just straight up malpractice, right? Like you can't coach like that. His mantra forever was, I'm doing what's best for the team. I'm doing what's best for the team. What's best for the football team is what I'm doing. There's no way if you put a lie detector test on Bill Belichick and you asked him, is Matt Patricia being the offensive play caller the right decision for this team? It would be a lie if he said yes.
Right.
It made no sense. It felt like a favor. And it was irresponsible, frankly. Like, you can't do that. You just can't do it. And he gets a pass because he's Belichick. 31 other coaches aren't getting the same pass.
That's correct. And he had to fix it, and he did fix it, which is good. But it's just like, you wonder, did he want Bill O'Brien? And when he didn't get Bill O'Brien, he just settled for Patricia because it's just like, I don't know. It just
I would
doesn't
love to
sit
know.
right.
We'll never know, but I would love to know.
No, you'll never find out.
No.
So unfortunately, but you know, what are you gonna do? All right, one question. Team Crazy Matt is asking about: do you think they'll bring a fullback back into the offense?
Yeah.
Bill O'Brien did run a decent amount of fullback stuff, obviously with the old school Patriots and whatnot when he was here. Do you think that's something they might do?
Not a true James Devlin. I
Yeah.
think I thought that Jonnu Smith could fill an H-back fullback role.
Right.
But
Obviously not.
now he's gone, right? So
Right.
I don't know what their plan is. I don't think they're going to bring someone in. I thought they could get creative with Jonnu. Who knows? Maybe they bring in Mike Gesicki. Maybe they draft Darnell Washington. But right now, and I'm talking for like a second tight end that you can use in the backfield as a run blocker.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're going to go traditional fullback. I think you talk about Bill O'Brien and, Alabama-fying the offense and mixing what he used to do with what he learned in Alabama's system. I think the fullback kind of goes away at that point, and it's more so RPO type stuff and, running the football while passing the football. That sounds kind of silly, but what I mean is like a screen pass in an RPO is effectively a run play. And
exactly.
So it's going to end up being that kind of stuff. I don't think you're going to see ground and pound James Devlin like we did in the past.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I think it's a really good point. And they don't, not that they don't have the backs for it, but Ramondre isn't really that type of guy. Neither is James Robinson, which I do like that signing of James Robinson because he did show a decent amount, I thought, in Jacksonville and got kind of pushed out of there. But he's your backup running back, and ultimately, I'm curious to see what the guaranteed money is on that because it's one of those ones where it's like ultimately like, well, if Pierre Strong and Kevin Harris outplay him in training camp, could they just cut bait and just say, thanks for coming out, but we're going to stick with these two guys? I think that's a possibility, but I do think he brings some upside. So
he can add as a pass catcher a little bit as well.
Yep.
So
very true.
That's solid.
Very true. All right. Josh has a question here about Jalen Carter. If it drops to 14, are you taking Jalen Carter at 14?
He has tumbled over these last few weeks. And I mean, first of all, totally serious. I hope that he's okay as a human. Yeah. Like he's had a lot of stuff go on. Right. And something came out today where I think he had a deal with, the Athens Police Department and he won't see jail time. So I guess that's a positive for him. But his performance at the Georgia Pro Day where he came in like 13 pounds heavier than he was at the combine. That's probably something I just want to stay away from. Again, at his peak and, peak Jalen Carter, he will be a dominant defensive tackle in the NFL if he can get there. But I think they're okay on the interior defensive line right now. Christian Barmore gets healthy. Lawrence Guy's still here. Guy's older, but he always shows out. Carl Davis resigns. I would rather go later in the draft and find like a Dante Stills from West Virginia or something. There's more needs at 14 where I'll let Carter go past 14.
Right. And listen, I think long and hard about it. He is where he is, he's a top 5 talent. But you're right.
The 3rd overall pick, I bet.
Right.
If everything didn't happen.
But then you wonder and you're like, is it that big of a need for the Patriots? Like, does that move the needle? Does that change the team enough to justify taking him at 14? I just don't know if it does, and that's
I agree.
That's the hard part. I think you put it kind of perfectly where it's like, hey, you let him go because you got no choice. Now, maybe if he drops to 14, someone at 18 or 20 is like, holy crap, Jalen Carter's still there. Let's go. I'll give you a set, first and a third to move up. And you say, all right. And then you slide back and you take, a wide receiver over there at 18 or something like that. Yeah. So, but I think that's interesting. Thad, we already talked about wide receiver. So, we don't want to go over that whole thing again. We started with that. All right, we've talked some Patriots. I have an interesting hypothetical for you. It's a hypothetical that someone threw out and was like so 100% confident on TikTok. And, just to kind of set the scene, the question was, could you throw for 10 yards in an NFL game? This is a live NFL game, 11-on-11. good wide receivers, good cornerbacks, and like a competent offensive line against a competent defensive line, right? You're not going to have 6 guys in your face trying to throw the ball. Do you think, Mike, you could throw for 10 yards in an NFL game?
So it's a full game.
I think so, yeah.
So it's not one play, right? It's
right.
not a one
right.
10-yard
Correct.
play.
Yes, it's not one attempt. Game. Yes.
All right. I hate tooting my own horn, but I did play quarterback in college.
Okay.
Played Division III football.
Now you're cheating. Okay.
Played Division III football. That is nowhere near the Worcester State.
Worcester State. I went to
State.
school in Worcester.
Okay. So yeah. That being said, I don't know. I don't want to say yes because everyone's like, you can't do it. And so, I mean, okay, look, if you set up like 5 screen passes.
No, right? No screens. No screens. They said no screens, and every pass has to be beyond the line of scrimmage. That's what they said.
I don't think I can do it. Strictly nerves. I think at that point, I don't care, right? It's like, okay, just get a receiver open on a cornerback. All he's gonna do is throw a quick slant.
Right.
I would see Aaron Donald in front of me. I would see Jalen Carter in front of me, right? And I would be like, no way, it's probably not getting over the line. So,
Mike, it's the easiest question of all time. I could 1,000% do it. 1,000%. Now, listen, here's the thing. Here's why, okay?
Justify it.
We would lose 700 to nothing. I would throw 14 pick sixes. Like, I would be terrible. But if you just needed me to throw 10 yards, I could do that. Like, just if he's a competent wide receiver, he's going to be able to get there at one point,
I
right?
guess you could just throw jump balls.
You know what I mean? Like, or even like a slant route. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to do a slant route, or they're going to run a single high safety. I'm going to look to the left, and I'm just going to throw it to the right without even looking, and just hope that he goes and gets it. Like, who knows? You know what I mean?
That's not going to do you any good, though.
You're right.
And looking right at that point, it's
100%. You're totally right. But I just feel like if he beats his guy on a slant route, and I somehow get the ball to him in one of my 70 attempts, right? That's 6 yards right there. All I got to do is do that twice. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay,
and again, if the question were, could you lead a touchdown drive? Absolutely not. Nope. Like, absolutely not. You know, could you complete a red zone?
Could you get a first down? Probably not.
Probably not. No, probably not. Don't feel confident about it. Yeah. No. But again, if you gave me all game long and you were like, we don't care about the score, we just want to see if you can do it, I could do it eventually.
I think you've convinced me.
We'd lose by 1,000,000. I'd make Nathan Peterman look like the greatest player of all time. But
what if are you factoring injury in?
Well, see, no.
But if you get sacked.
Oh, if I get sacked, I'm dead. But
so you got to get that ball off quick.
That's why it's got to be quick slants because I'm standing in the shotgun and I'm probably 7 yards back in the shotgun.
Yeah.
And then just throwing it as hard as I can on the slant route and just praying that my guy somehow comes down with it. You know,
but I think you've changed my mind. I think I could do it now that you've said that.
You know what I mean? Like when you throw in the extra caveats of you can throw as many interceptions as you possibly want and as many incompletions, right? Yeah. I could go 2 for 75 in an NFL game. Sure, why not? You know,
for 9 yards.
right. Yeah. 11. Give me 11 yards, and there it is. You know.
Yeah, we'll get it.
So, but hey, it would be fun to find out.
I can do it.
I'll tell you, man. I don't know, you know, obviously people have met athletes and stuff, but when you see athletes in a competitive event, right? I used to test basketball shoes at Reebok. So I've played against, NFL players and NBA players like in basketball. We're just playing pickup. I mean, it's not like an actual game, but like when you see the skill and ability, they're not even human. Like they're not human. It's incredible to say. I remember Chad Jackson. I played against Chad Jackson when he was on the Patriots, and he jumped from outside the paint on the baseline and just threw it down like it was nothing. It wasn't even like he was like took a huge running start. He just like 2 steps and leaped. And I was like, how in the world did that happen?
That's not even an NBA guy. That's
yeah. So it's just to see them. I mean, to be on the field against 11 of those guys.
Right.
I mean, Jesus Christ. So, but you're right. No, it would have to be it would have to be immediately, because if I got hit, I'd be dead.
And it might be 11 yards. I think you have a quarter, because at that point you might get hurt.
That's a good point. That is a good point. Or like my arm would fall off from just trying to throw it as hard as I possibly could. Right. So.
Or you throw an interception and then you get blocked.
Oh no! I'm dropping directly to the ground if I throw an interception. 100%, dude.
Smart.
Or just running as fast as I can in the
away.
opposite direction.
Yeah. Run away.
So yeah, because even dropping in the ground, someone lands on top of you. Forget about it. That's
someone
bad
gets
enough.
shoved on top of you. Yeah, you're
right. Yeah, not good. So anyways, all right. Well, there you go. Look at that. We're NFL quarterbacks. How about that?
Yeah, exactly.
So I actually played.
One. That's a good question.
It's a pretty good one, right? I mean, because again, if it's can you throw a touchdown pass or lead a touchdown? Like, no, that's stupid. Of course you couldn't. You know what I mean? But it is interesting to think about, like, if you gave me enough chances, I could probably complete a few passes, like eventually, right? Yeah. And, again, I'd throw 70 interceptions, but like, so what, So it's funny. I played football at Assumption for a year, but we practiced on the Worcester State field. I don't know when you graduated college, but back when I played on the Worcester State field, it was like concrete with a very small layer of AstroTurf on top of it. And it was brutal.
Our field was a little bit better. I graduated in 2019. So
Oh yeah. You're just a few years younger than me.
Yeah. So we had a better field at that point.
Yeah. Okay, well, there you go.
I played at Assumption. We did 7-on-7s at Assumption. And,
oh, really?
Yeah. And actually, Deontay Harris, NFL player from Assumption.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's right. You probably played with him, right?
We played 7s against him, and he intercepted me. Fun fact.
There you go. Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that. You've been picked off by an NFL player.
Exactly.
You're already on your way to throw.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yep.
I love it. I love it. Oh, you know what? That has one more question. One more Patriots question before I let you go. Cute cornerback in the 3rd round. Julius Brents, I think, is probably going to go before that. We talked about him already. He's probably going to go 2nd round.
Yeah.
Is there a 3rd round guy that you're like, ooh, I like this guy? Anyone off the top of your head that you're kind of like,
They're going to go so fast, I feel like. Like you look at a guy like Darius Rush from South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
That's like one of those 2nd or 3rd tier guys. But once Brents goes, I think they're just going to tumble after that. And so there might not be many great guys towards the end. I mean, Keitrell Clark from Louisville is an interesting one. He's more like a 4th, maybe 4th or 5th round guy. But again, once they start to go, then the run on cornerbacks goes, and then
that's
But
that's really
I like Clark and I like Darius Rush. Darius Rush was forget the number exactly, but him and Cam Smith, his teammate at South Carolina. Fast at the combine.
Real fast. Yeah, real fast.
I like that group of guys too. Cornerback's very deep.
Yeah, there's also Caillou Blue Kelly from Stanford as well.
Yeah.
Who I like. He could be a 3rd round pick, But again, like you say, like who the heck knows what's going to happen? The guy that scares me is Hodges Tomlinson, who I like him.
It's like 5'8".
But again, 5'9", like 180. It's just like 5'8", 5'9". We can't do another one of those guys. We can't. So
they need the size.
Yeah. Yep. So give me a big guy with some speed, and that could be any of those guys that you mentioned, or even someone else. Who knows? But we'll see. So
they could do it.
Mike, this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you coming through. I will. See, Team Crazy Matt agrees with my Caillou Blue Kelly. I knew Matt liked him. That's a SCO Slack channel shout out right there. He loves them in there. So
alrighty.
Anyways, Mike, thanks so much for coming on. Before we let you go, tell everyone where they can see you and read you and hear you and everything else.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter. Am I pointing the right way?
Nope, there it is.
At Mike Kadlick. You can find me on Patriots Press Pass YouTube on the Patriots Beat podcast with Alex Barth. You can read my stuff at clnsmedia.com. We will have you covered there. All my stuff's on my Twitter, so that's the place to go. With all Patriots draft stuff, coming up down the line. Sports betting's legal, so we'll get some gambling stuff going there too. So just follow me on Twitter, and you'll be able to find me.
Love it. I love it. I got my first ever sports bet going on right now as we speak. I did a parlay with Auburn and A&M, just straight money lines. Sure. Auburn already won, which is good. They got one half of it done, and we'll see if A&M can pull it out as well. And then
I got A&M later too. So
I've won
Go
my
Aggies.
first. There you go. See, look at that.
Alrighty.
So, all right. Well, Mike, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And we'll
course.
definitely have to have you on again. This was a lot of fun.
For sure. Happy to do it. Thanks, Pat.
All right,
Good
man.
job,
Have a
dude.
great night. Okay.
Yeah, you as well.
Thanks. All right. That was great. We appreciate Mike coming through. A lot of fun. All right. We're going to do a final segment of the show, and then we'll get you guys out of here. Thank you so much for listening. And I know there's some new people here as well. Appreciate it. And hopefully you guys like this one as well. Here we go.
And now for something we think you'll really like. This Week in Sports History.
All right. So always do a little bit of events from this week in sports history. And these two are actually from this day in sports history, which is March 16th, of course. So March 16th, 1876, the first female boxing match ever in New York. Nellie Saunders versus Rose Harland, 1876, March 16th. How about that? And then I'll give you one more as well. March 16th, 1955, Canadian superstar Maurice Rocket Richard gets suspended for the rest of the season after he attacked some of his opponents. And Montreal wasn't very happy. Riots in the streets ensued in Montreal because he was suspended for the rest of the year. So Rocket Richard, one hell of a player, but you know, it's good stuff. So little Thad giving a little love to Mike there. Appreciate that. Always love hearing your takes. You're better than most analysts. I assume that was directed at Mike, but you never know. Maybe it was directed at me, but we're going to assume it was directed at Mike. Again, Mike Kadlick, we appreciate him coming through. That was a lot of fun. We have done a few podcasts already this week. Obviously, we got this one as well. If there is any more big breaking news, if Taylor Rapp gets signed, if the Patriots make a trade for Jerry Jeudy or DeAndre Hopkins, or they do something else crazy, we will be on again to do an instant reaction podcast. But if not, we'll be back next week, midweek. We have some big announcements coming. Probably going to try to do a show with all four of us. That's me and Matt and Alec and Rich. All four of us are going to try to be on the same show, give a little bit of an announcement, a little bit of an update for you guys. You may notice the podcast feed, while the feed stayed the same, the name of the feed is now different. Okay, the name of the feed is New England Football Podcast as opposed to Patriot Nation Podcast. So we'll have a little bit of an update as to why that is and what that's going to be. So anyways, so that's what we got. So we'll have an update for that later on next week. But again, if we don't see you on an instant reaction podcast because something crazy happened, we'll talk to you next week. Thanks so much for listening, guys. Appreciate it. And have yourself a great St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day falling on a Friday that's just real nice. That's just real nice. So everyone go out there and enjoy it, but enjoy it responsibly and be safe out there and have fun. We'll talk to you guys. Thanks a lot.